Good morning, Aurora. Good morning, Aurora. Good morning, Aurora. The time is 9:02 a.m. You're listening to and watching Good Morning, Aurora, the second largest city's first daily news podcast. It's Thursday, the 14th of February, right?
13th. Tomorrow
13th.
would be Valentine's Day, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I don't have a Valentine, but I'm playing some music.
And we are back with the second episode, part two, with our dear friend Tim Schaiberger. How you feeling?
I'm feeling really good, man. Glad to be back.
Okay, glad to have you back, man.
Yeah.
Glad to have you back.
Yeah, good to see you, man.
Yep. The shirt kind of threw me off. It does look a little Valentine-y.
Right, I thought I got dressed nice for you, Curtis. You're putting me on screen. So.
Thanks, man. So you are the author of A Boy Scout Goes to Spain.
Yes.
Which is a collection of memoirs from your grandfather during the Spanish Civil War.
Yes, right before it, yes.
Right before the Spanish Civil War. So, tell us about the book, your journey as a writer, and give the people a little bit more of who you are.
Yeah, definitely. Once again, thank you so much for having me back. Thank you, Aurora. Once again, my adopted town for the past few years, and I love it here, so shout out to Aurora. I wrote this when I was 22 years old. My father had passed away, had brain cancer from Agent Orange from serving in Vietnam. And as my mother and I were kind of going through my dad's stuff, there was this old Foot Locker. Long story short, I finally opened it up and found all this interesting stuff in there from like World War II. And I found this big pack of like Boy Scout cards that looked really old. And I'm like, 1934, what's this all about? Then as I was digging through, I found a brown like leather book that said My Trip on it. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I picked it up and started reading it. And the first thing it said was a good place to eat in Madrid is Heidelberg Restaurant next to the Chamber of Deputies. And I'm like, okay, this is all in cursive. This is all written, turned over. There's pictures. There's lists of money spent. I'm looking over. There's what bus accident? What is this? And then I come to find out something I never knew is that in 1934, my grandfather lived in Toledo, Ohio, and he was a Boy Scout and went to DeVilbiss High School. And he was chosen to go on a delegation to exchange ideas between Toledo, Ohio, and Toledo, Spain.
Wow.
So this was the first ever recognized sister cities international type of relationship, was Toledo, Ohio, and Toledo, Spain.
In American history?
In American history, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's so if you ever heard of the Sister Cities International, this was like the first recognized, like established that idea.
That's amazing.
Was this. So he went there and ended up keeping a journal of everything that happened while he was there. So it's more of a just journal collection than a memoir, but it's written from the point of view of a 16-year-old Boy Scout who kept track of everything. And not only is it a cool story and it reads like the beginning of an Indiana Jones book or something.
Oh, come on, that's
it's
my movie.
Great. That's what I'm saying.
Those are my movies.
So I always tell people if they liked Indiana Jones and the Holy Grail, if you Last Crusade, if you want to like the beginning with the River Phoenix part, that's just imagine that character and like it reads like an adventure novel. But this is a 16-year-old kid just making observations about the time. You can tell he's noticing poor people, but he's also part of this really expensive like international delegation. But he's also noticing kind of the juxtaposition of everything. And he describes going to bullfights. He was there it would have been the same time as like Hemingway was getting ready to go over there. So like there's like if you like any kind of 1920s writing or like any that generation, it kind of relates through that. But he ends up keeping track of his 3 months he's there, goes to North Africa, writes all about that. And that's just an interesting point of view because A, it all really happened. Right. B, it was the beginning of something really big. C, he kind of hints at all the different things. He mentions twice in the journal that they're talking he hears adults talking about the fall of the government any day now. And that's totally foreshadowing that Franco was getting ready to take over and fascism was taking control in Spain. Right. And he was kind of at the forefront of that. And just some of the observations he makes as a kid, not even knowing, it's just kind of interesting to read back on it from that point of view. Yeah. But when I found this, I found this and it was all written in cursive and almost 100 years old. I mean,
very impressive when you look at it.
Oh yeah, it was literally like trying to translate, especially like if you show like a kid now, like look at me like, oh, what is this? Yeah. I even took pictures for presentations and stuff for it to kind of show people like this is the cursive that the adults talk about all the time.
Now this was, I assume, his first trip.
Yes.
So he'd never been to Spain before.
Never.
This is his first experience in the Boy Scouts.
Yes,
being a delegate.
Yep.
So all of these are firsts for him.
And then especially two things. He wasn't even the one chosen to go on the trip. The best Spanish student, got sick, had like appendicitis or something.
Hey, fate happens like that.
And the fate, yes, literally the fate of my grandpa even doing this was because the other kid got sick. I mean, he was class president. It wasn't like he was some like slouch or anything, but this other kid was just better at Spanish. And I still actually have his Spanish book as well from that he learned to take over there with him so he could translate stuff and everything.
That's awesome.
But yeah, they get robbed. They're in a bus accident. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So now this is our second discussion. If you're just joining us, good morning to you. It's 9:07 a.m. You're listening to and watching Good Morning Aurora, the second largest city's first daily news podcast. We're here with our dear friend Tim Schaiberger, author of A Boy Scout Goes to Spain. Something I wanted, we got to the edges of this in our first interview, but I want to dig a little deeper with our 2025 lenses on.
Yeah.
What observations did you make when reading this and perusing through it and locating these intimate dates and places and seeing and reading the observations?
Yeah.
You know, a 16-year-old young white kid from Ohio goes to Spain. What type of deliberations and things with the eyes of today did you start to pull out of that experience on the human level? What was he seeing? You get where I'm coming from?
Actually, it is a great allegory to now, not that hopefully this doesn't happen, but a big thing was going on in the 1930s, and that's called the Great Depression. So if you take into consideration that my grandfather, his father had owned a tavern, somehow managed to make a whole bunch of money during Prohibition. Don't know how that could possibly happen on a lake across the street from
You got to be enterprising.
Got to be enterprising. So when my grandfather went over there, as you would read about in the book, there is gold-plated silverware they're eating from these plates. There's 9-seat cars driving them to events, military escorts, thousands of people in the street, people filming them. All of these things are happening. And every couple pages of the journal, once again, my grandfather's noticing there's a lot of poor people around here.
Right.
And so they go through all these celebrations, and just like now, it's like all the people with the means are just going on like nothing is happening at all.
Right.
And the people that kind of observe that don't have the means to just do whatever they want.
Right.
You know, that's where a big miscommunication comes, because there's a lot of people are not doing as well as they should be, and they don't understand why.
Right.
And then that allows, just like in fascism can take over other places, sometimes people can come in and give you something to be scared of, and all of a sudden you can rally around lies. And that's kind of what happened in Europe in the 1930s. And it's very akin to what's kind of happening now, because there's a lot of things where the people that don't have as much really want to just be able to survive.
Right.
And the people that have a lot don't realize that those people don't have things. You know, the "let them eat cake" quote from Marie Antoinette. Yeah, like it still hits today. You know, like. But I think the big thing that he notices, because my family came from that. I used to do stand-up, and my opening bit was, you know what, I always wanted to be a motivational speaker. I always wanted to talk to people, but I feel bad because I grew up with money. I can't, everybody who's a motivational speaker grew up poor. I can't relate to that. I'm like, I wasn't poor till I got married.
Right.
Yeah. So shout out to my ex. You're cool. No, but so either way, you know what I'm saying? So growing up, like, my family came from a lot of things. So they were that upper crust. My grandpa was the first surgeon. When he grew up, he became a surgeon, was the first one north of Bay City. Like, they were part of the upper crust kind of the Toledo area.
Right.
So him noticing that was kind of cool. I think if he got older, in his 20s, because the book also touches on World War II and Vietnam a little bit at the end. So we haven't talked about that yet. But I think as he got older, he would not have been as receptive to that. I don't think he would have been as receptive as he got older and more established in his career.
Okay.
Because that was still like the 1940s where there was, I mean, the income inequality then was bad too, hence what kind of left to the Great Depression, you know, and it did take the government intervention of FDR to fix stuff. We still, which if you do on any kind of research, it was still a handout to companies. He just made sure, you know, it looked good.
The New Deal.
Oh, everything. Oh, the New Deal. The New Deal was still completely based on capital versus labor, but that's another story, because that's not even have to do anything with fascism at this point. But.
Well, I am again. I did find that very impressive and very healthy, because I do believe that what's made a lot of the good writing from that era. You mentioned Hemingway.
Yes.
You know, to show the, to highlight the Gilded Age in print.
Yes.
But yet to have the abject poverty of some of today's third world countries in America.
Yes.
Is an amazing literary feat to pull that off. So it is, again, it's just fascinating to me to hear that, that he's able to see that, like, wow, I just so happen to have it okay back in Ohio, still kind of hurting. It's the 30s, it was a Great Depression, but man, over here in Spain,
he noticed
kind of European standards too. All right, so it's 9:12.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Gotta keep an eye on this time.
Yeah, I know, I got you, man.
Josue Pais says, where can we get this book? Where can people find this book?
Actually, the best way to get it right now is online. There's one, the brick and mortar store it's available at would be Black Dog Vinyl Cafe in Plainfield. I play music down there sometimes at their open mics.
Oh, shout them out.
They're a great place. Great place for your vinyl. They have coffee. Great place. Every couple Fridays they have an open mic down there. But you can get physical copies there. But I would really love to, and I'm just going to kind of shout out early to my stuff, but boyscoutgoestospain.com is my website. And everything on there, wherever you get your books from online, it is available on all of those. And I am trying to set up times where I can maybe meet people, maybe even at the local library. I would love to meet up a time, and if people want them signed, I would love to just meet there and meet people who read it or have any questions. That's something I've been kind of trying to set up as well. But go to my website, boyscoutgoestospain.com, and then there's links to all the places you can buy it. But if you just have an Amazon account, just click on the Amazon one. Barnes & Noble. I mean, if you don't want to go to Amazon, I get it, but
right.
I mean, still helping. I am the small business guy, that part. So.
Absolutely, yeah. So shout out the website. Absolutely, it's good, great way to support. Yep. Omar Sanchez is here. Good morning to you, Omar Sanchez. And Ashley Harper is here. She says hi.
Oh,
Tim
hi,
Schaiberger.
Ashley. Yeah, I know Ashley.
Tracy Duran is here. Good morning to you, and good morning back at you, Ashley. And Make Ball and Daniel Calderon. Good morning to all of you guys. 9:14 is the time. So, the book ends or starts to sunset on the Vietnam experience.
Yes.
And the Vietnam experience was what your grandfather.
Well, that would be my father.
Your father, excuse me.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Curtis. One of the things I want to mention.
This
is an interesting book. If you like history, this is a collection of journals written from a first-person point of view.
Right.
These are first-person, real world. This happened to these people and their experiences. Yep. Some people I've never really got any negative feedback from it, but one guy was like, it didn't read like a story, it was a journal. I'm like, yep, that's why I told you that. So if it's more of a history, it kind of reads like that, but it is a kid talking about what he's seeing and doing.
Right.
But the second part, I noticed again, my grandfather really liked writing. He went to World War II and got drafted when my grandma was 6 months pregnant with my father. Wow. So my dad didn't meet my grandpa until he was almost 4 years old.
Wow.
So when he was going over to World War II, he started writing a journal. But as I'm sure as most people know, once you go into combat, you don't get to keep a journal anymore. Right? So he did that, and so it kept track of his first couple months of being drafted before he goes over to England. And he was part of the first MASH unit. Okay. That was over in World War II after Normandy.
Right.
So that ends there. But the book ends with what the sequel is going to lead to that I'm currently working on. But it is my father's recollection because he was a combat medic with a MACV Special Operations Group in Vietnam in 1967-68. And he was, the night of the Tet Offensive, his compound was infiltrated and 100% destroyed. And he ended up being dug out by a, like completely destroyed, had to defend his compound. It's an action novel. It is the letter he wrote to my mother. Like this, out of all the things in Vietnam, this was the most intense. This is the thing this was the battle that I went through. And that is kind of the primer for what the sequel is going to be, is my parents' relationship during Vietnam and how like a young mother, we have a young wife being back home, and it's a pretty interesting story. But a lot of people don't know about the Vietnam War, and a lot of people don't realize how much that changed America. It was the first time they showed the amount of dead on TV. It's the first time war was televised.
Right.
And it was the first time we had anti-war stuff. It was the first time people, kept track of that thing. We're so desensitized to that now. That kind of stuff people don't notice as much.
Right.
But that's a big reason things, Pentagon Papers and all the stuff came out about Vietnam was because we finally got to see what war led to.
Right.
But a thing you don't really see from a combat medic point of view is them actually fighting. If you've ever watched Saving Private Ryan, if you've ever watched Hacksaw Ridge or whatever, Heartbreak Ridge, it's all about the medic. Oh no, they can't. I have the thing. Get the gun away from me. I can't.
Yeah,
in Vietnam,
Doc with the Doc with the pipe, just chilling,
not with
perfect uniform. Hey boys.
In Vietnam, you're shooting at people while you're doing a chest wound while you're shooting at people. And you're like, it's just was such a different environment that it's just a good way to kind of end the story. But yeah, so it's Sundowns with that in the end of the book, but that's a good primer for the sequel. But this is a collection. If you like history, if you like especially the history of war and like real points of view from that, it's pretty cool. And a lot of people have these kinds of things, but a lot of people don't go through the trouble of saving them. A lot of people don't go through the trouble, of writing them down. You know what I'm saying? Like you might find your grandpa's old journal, but I don't know if somebody's going to sit there and read through the whole thing. I just happened to because I'm a voracious reader anyways, and I wanted to see what it was about, and still grieving from losing my own father and stuff at the time. And one of the most interesting things that I looked back on when I was probably in like 6th grade, my grandparents had moved out to Green Valley, Arizona, and we were at dinner at this restaurant, and my grandfather was speaking fluent Spanish with the waitress, and they're laughing and joking and telling jokes and just completely just fluent. I never thought of it in a million years. It's like my grandpa's the famous surgeon guy who's like part of like the the annals of our county. Of course he knows how to speak Spanish. I would just assume he does. But I did not find out until literally it was about a decade after that he even did this. And then I find out like the University of Toledo has an entire floor dedicated to this trip. They just shared a bunch of the things that he talks about getting in the book. That's another shout out, the University of Toledo. If you are interested in this at all, I'm going there April 9th to talk to the University of Toledo, all the Spanish students there, to give kind of a presentation on this and talk to them about it.
That's amazing.
But there's actually a floor dedicated to this, because not only did this establish like the sister cities relationship, the reason that it stopped at that point and was put off for 15 years is because of the Spanish Civil War and then World War II right afterwards. Because a lot of people don't realize the Spanish Civil War kind of goes into World War II, because a lot of Americans don't realize we weren't in it until December 1941, where it's kind of like it was going on for about 4 years before we were even part of it.
And we weren't necessarily allies with that government at that time.
Exactly. There was always some issues. America's always been What does my daughter say? What do the kids say now when somebody's like?
Oh, they say a lot.
What what I'm saying? It's not like a Sigma type thing, but it's like I can't think of it right now. But it's like that, not catastrophic, problematic. It's like he's problematic now. Like when they use that. And I'm like, yeah, you are right about that.
So is the sister cities relationship has been reestablished, though?
Yes. So back in like around 1961, they reestablished it, and it's been a thing ever since. It's actually it's now called the Association of Two Toledos. And it is the 90th anniversary of this original delegation this year. 91st technically, but we're calling it the 90th because. And not only am I going to be a special guest of them, we're going to Toledo for a week to kind of pretty much do the exact same thing that you will read about my grandpa doing. Toledo, Spain.
Not Ohio.
Not Ohio, Toledo, Spain. So I'm going to be going to Toledo, Spain with this group.
Big dog.
And we're going to be kind of doing the same stuff that my grandfather had gone through there. They're even... In the book, if you read it, he talks about being filmed. Like when they get back, like they're like, I got to see myself on film today because they were videotaping the events.
Yes.
So he got to go to the theater and got to watch on film. They have those copies they want to show us when we go there. So I'm going to get to see my grandpa up on the screen.
That's the old school.
It's the old school.
That's like the real. That's amazing.
So that's something that's going to be cool. But I don't know. I'm super excited about everything. The craziest part though is we found out the dates. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to be there at this date. So I want to, I'm going to do a night in Madrid myself, before I get with the group, see what I can do, do that first.
Yeah, see where they're crushing grapes at.
Yeah, exactly.
Feeding you shrimp.
So I look, and I had my flight, and I'm like, well, I went to Italy a couple years ago. I went overnight. I liked that because then I kind of slept on the plane, started out my day. I'm like, oh, I got to change the date. And I'm like, oh, May 17th is when I have to go to do that. Okay. That's the exact same date he left.
Left America?
He left America in 1934 on the exact same date that I'm leaving America.
That's amazing.
And I was like, why is this date familiar? Why is this date familiar? And I'm like, oh my God, it's the first line of the book, leaving May 17th, 1934.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You got any tattoos?
I do have some tattoos.
I would get that tatted.
I
mean, that's just me. I don't know why my mind went there to think about that, but
yes,
I would. I totally would. Man, I have so many ideas. Well, I don't want to give you any ideas. It's only 9:22 a.m.
Dude, it's always like I gotta like get 6 months away, and then I'm like, I want to change my mind, but I do. Yeah, I love tattoos. I've been wanting to get one, but yeah. Okay. But so either way, yes, this as far as this book goes. If you like history and you want a first-hand point of view, and you like any that, especially stuff that isn't really talked about. Like I guess like a combat medic point of view, like that's really not talked about. The Spanish Civil War had world consequences. People don't know. That's how Hitler learned how to blitzkrieg. That's how he perfected it. When they're like, man, he attacked Poland, and how did he do that so quickly? He spent 3 years practicing on small towns in Spain, like Guernica, which is my picture. If you guys follow me on Facebook, that black and white picture that I have up is called Guernica. And it is a painting by Pablo Picasso, who I know you all have heard of. But it's about the destruction and the horror of war and what just happens to these small towns and the imagery in it. I use it when I talk to kids to point at this picture, and it always comes up. I don't get as many like as I'd like, but I don't get laughs. Kids aren't laughing at it. They know it's not a good thing. But
and that's the Facebook page for A Boy Scout Goes to Spain?
That's just my personal Facebook page I put up. The irony is I don't have a page for that. Because I always send people to my website.
The book needs a page.
Yeah, I need to. I just have so many pages. I used to sell cars, and I used to do marketing for people. So I'm part of. I have like 50 pages I'm part of, and in another life I used to help people with their Facebook. So I was always part of it. So anyhow, but I get what you're saying. So I'm trying to. Yeah, I don't know. As long as I can keep tagging you guys, I can.
No, absolutely. So 9:23 is the time. So with the what else has the family experience and writing done for you that has been a continual skill? Because you weren't a writer before the discovery of the files, or were you?
I was. I actually have a creative writing degree from Central Michigan University, so I've actually been published for some poems.
You got many surprises, man.
This is my thing, man. I'm a conundrum onion wrapped inside an enigma. No, I graduated. I went to real quick, just give a quick background on that. Some of my first memories are sitting at my mom's typewriter, typing up stuff.
My next question is going to be, what was the first thing you ever wrote?
First thing I ever wrote, actually the first thing I ever wrote that I distinctly remember writing, 8th grade, and the irony of this, losing my father within a few years of this, was an essay. I was one of those kids that always I clept out of freshman English in college. Like I only had like one English teacher all through high school because it was always the advanced English classes, and I was reading Dostoevsky and stuff when I was like 14 and really keeping up on that stuff. But the thing I'm most proud of writing is I've always been an essayist more than a fiction guy. So I like writing essays, I like writing real stuff, and I really like poetry. I really like just weird things. I really like magical realism, but I've had yet way to find that. But the first thing I really wrote and I was proud of was writing about, it was a hero essay. And everybody in my class was picking somebody famous or a ball player, and I picked my dad. And I was one of the only, one other kid picked their dad in the entire class. But he was a doctor. He was, served in war. He was, around as much as he could. It was one of those things. A big thing that I try to reference people, and if they've ever seen the cartoon King of the Hill.
Oh, yeah.
Like the Bobby-Hank relationship, until I started playing football and was good at sports. That was me and my dad until I was like 13. It's like, oh, you're good at football. We can be best friends now. And I'm like, oh, cool, Dad. Which was whatever, man. But I was kind of animated as a kid. So
yeah. Well, it's always those bonding, those special bonding moments.
Yeah. So essays, and then real nonfiction kind of became my focus as a kid. So I was always just writing essays and just voraciously reading. But I had written some articles for the local paper. I'd written, I've done journalism. I've done, I have another, if you can find this book, good luck. But Memoirs of a Pizza Delivery Guy was actually a short story I had published about probably 16 years ago, and that was the first one that I really
that sounds like something
cool.
I'd read that.
Especially in I mean, it gets kind of crazy, but I worked as a pizza delivery guy before. I mean, this is before GPS. Ooh, I had to see an address and drive to it.
Get the map. Lay the map out.
There was a map literally with pin. Okay, Luckily, it was a place you kind of knew the regulars, but so anyhow, I graduated. Worked on writing, went to school, was going to just be a communications major or something, and then I took a creative writing class, and I'm like, oh wait, I like this a lot. and then discovered writers. And like my dream, I'd love to be like an English professor or teacher. That's kind of what I'm working towards at some point. But I also would love to be just a writer too, which I kind of am. I guess technically I am. I'm published, working on a sequel, written some other stuff. But I've always loved writing. I've always loved being creative. I focus a lot. I've done stand-up comedy. My favorite thing to do is sing and play guitar. That's why I like the shout out to Black Dog Vinyl and some of the other plays, Fox Valley Jammers. Shout out to them too. There's a bunch of open mics and stuff. If anybody wants to play music out, you can. I'm telling you. So that's been my dream, and that's what I've been kind of focused on. But I mean, I've actually written even I have like a 160-page movie script based on this book that I'm kind of trying to see what I can do with. I have it translated into Spanish. Like, there's a whole bunch of things that I've done.
The future is with this. The future is bright.
The future is it's trying to be, man. This is 2025 is going to be the year, I hope. So,
well, we're pleased to have you back on for a part 2. You know, a part 3 is definitely always in the future with you, and
would love to come back.
When you go to Spain, when you take that trip, you know, if you take some general pictures that you feel comfortable with us sharing, you know, we'd be happy to share them. And
there might even be a whole video saying, "Hey, how you doing, Curtis? How's it good?
Oh yeah, do that.
Crew going.
Do that from
I would
Spain.
love to do that from Spain. That's gonna be my. Yeah, you wait. Yeah, you wait, man. Yup.
Yeah, I can just see it now. Hey, we're live in Madrid.
Yeah, I mean, I might be,
it's Curtis,
you know, partying in the background a little bit. Like, can you hear me?
The sangria is delicious.
Yeah, the sangria is delicious.
9:28 is the time. Ashley Harper says Fox Valley Jammers Club. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
Becky Hoff is here. She says, good morning, vote. Thank you very much, Becky Hoff. And we've got Tracy Duran who says, I agree. I need to get the book too. That is awesome. You guys get the book at a Boy Scout Goes to Spain.com.
Yes,
I want to say thank you very much once again to our dear friend Tim Schaiberger. Be on the lookout for the book, and if you can find it on Amazon, go ahead and support that as well. Support Tim. You will see him again on our program. Right now, the city's very first bilingual news podcast is going to begin. It's called Buenos Dias, Aurora, and it's going to be an episode of Estado de Mercado with Aaron Rodriguez and Erica Madrid, starting at 9:30. Take care of yourself. Be blessed. See you next time.
Being a local business in Chicago, we've always worked with community banks, but over time, those smaller banks started getting acquired by larger national footprint banks. It became time to work with Wintrust to meet our needs without having to have that big bank feel.
Wintrust understood what they wanted to accomplish, and they've increased in size 5 times over.
As we continue to grow, we're going to keep needing to borrow, so I'm sure they're going to love that.
Serving their needs. It's really the foundation of what Wintrust Commercial Banking is all about.